morning. Today is another one of our first fives from 1 Corinthians chapter 8. It's kind of an obscure passage where we're talking about food sacrificed to idols, but if you'll bear with me, I think there's some correlation we can make to our world today. And honestly, some of us may not like the correlation, but I think it's an accurate depiction for us in these days. And so we'll just kind of walk through that. So here's the text. Paul's writing to the church in Corinth. He's writing about how you can buy meat at the market that's been already sacrificed to idols, and so it's cheaper, and all those kinds of things are true. So here's what we see in the story. Now about food sacrificed to idols, we know that we all possess knowledge. Knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. The man who thinks he knows something does not yet know as he ought to know, but the man who loves God is known by God. So then, about eating food sacrificed to idols, we know that an idol is nothing at all in the world, and there is no God but one. For even if there are so-called gods, whether in heaven or on earth, as indeed there are many gods and many lords, yet for us there is but one God, the Father, from whom all things came and for whom we live, and there is but one Lord, Jesus Christ, through whom all things came, and through him we live. But not everyone knows this. Some people are still so accustomed to idols that when they eat such food, they think of it as having been sacrificed to an idol. And since their conscience is weak, it is defiled. But food does not bring us near to God. We are no worse if we do not eat, and no better if we do. Be careful, however, that the exercise of your freedom does not become a stumbling block to the weak. For if anyone with a weak conscience sees you, who have this knowledge, eating in an idol's temple, won't he be emboldened to eat what has been sacrificed to idols? So this weak brother for whom Christ died is destroyed by your knowledge. When you sin against your brothers in this way and wound their weak conscience, you sin against God. Therefore, if what I eat causes my brother to fall into sin, I will never eat meat again, so that I will not cause him to fall. Now, at one level, it's like, oh, so what Paul's saying is this. If there are things that you know people struggle with and they stumble with, you just avoid them. Yep. Pretty much. And you avoid it not because it's bad, but for the sake of the other person. So the question is, do you and I think about the other person? Now, some people argue, well, you can take that forever and you can do all kinds of things. True. But there are some things that people really struggle with. And so let's kind of look at this passage. There's really 4 different kinds of people that Paul's writing about. The first person is someone who doesn't even know meat sacrificed to idols is a big deal. Like they just eat it, they don't think about it, right? No big deal. The second person says, it's wrong, I won't do it. I know I can't do it. It's wrong, there's only one God, and it's not that idol, so I won't eat that meat. The third person is the one who understands it's meat sacrificed to idols, that those gods don't exist, that there is just one God. And since I know that there is just one God, I can eat the meat because I know that other God doesn't even exist. So I can eat the meat with good conscience because it doesn't matter. And the fourth person, though, is the one we all want to be. This is the person who says, yep, no such thing as idols. Yep, I can eat the meat. But yep, I'm not going to. Why? Because of my brother or sister who is 1, 2, or 3. Not that I'm just some great holy person, but I don't want to be a stumbling block to them. And if they think I think there's idols that are good and I'm worshiping this way, I don't want them to even perceive that. I want to live in such a way that I'm not one who causes someone to stumble. As Paul writes this, he says, very, very careful, however, that the exercise of your freedom does not become a stumbling block to the weak. In other words, you have the freedom to do what you want to do. You're like, all right, well, what would you talk about in these days? Well, as weird as this is, and some of you may be even ticked off by this analogy, I think it's a good one. I talk about mask, right? The wearing of a mask in these days really is more about my brother or sister. It's not about me. I mean, sure, for some people, they're just afraid and, they're afraid they might die, and that's fair. And so that might even be the person number 2. Number 1 says, no mask, they don't matter. They don't also read science, right, at all. Number 2 says, have to wear it, and you have to wear it, and we're all afraid of dying. That's probably not a good place to live. Number 3 says, I don't need a mask, I don't care, maybe I've even had my shot. Okay. But number 4 says, maybe I've even been vaccinated. But here's the thing. I care about that other person. And so I'm not going to make them think that I don't care. I'll wear a mask even though I don't even believe in it or I don't like it. That's what it looks like to worry about the other brother or the other sister. And I could take this so we could talk about alcohol. We could talk about all different kinds of things. We could talk about movies we watch or don't watch. I mean, I can take this list forever. But the question is, are you and I willing to live as someone who puts others first? That's what Paul's getting at. That's Paul's goal here, that we would model a maturity in our faith, that we would be that believer who doesn't eat the meat sacrificed to idols, not because it's bad, but because we know it may cause someone else to stumble because they are not as strong as we are in our faith. And so you and I are called to live as people who are wrapped up in God's love. And are you and I going to live in that way, where it's sacrificial and selfless, like the person of Jesus? Or are we going to be number 1, 2, or 3? I don't know about you, but I want to figure out how to live as number 4 as much as I can. And I want God's Spirit to convict me when I'm not. So may you and I be people who reflect God's love more and more. We'll catch you next time for another First 5.